On this episode of Front End Fire, Alchemy wants you to write your infrastructure code in JavaScript. We're going to talk about whether ubertools are the next big thing in AI or a trap. I'm excited to figure out what ubertools are. And Next.js has a 15.5 release, and we have some fun lightning news as well. Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome to Front End Fire. I am your host today, TJ Van Tol. I have Paige Niedringhaus with me.
Hey everybody.
And Jack Harrington.
Hello there.
And I really want to get into ubertools and Alchemy. We've got a fun mismatch of words today, so let's get into it.
Woohoo!
All right, Jack, I need to know what ubertools are.
Ubertools
whether they're the
are.
next big thing. Are they a trap? What's going on here?
Well, I'm excited that you don't know much about it because then I'll get your honest reaction to it. So, yeah, as we're all going through AI trying to figure out what the next new big thing is. There's a new school of thought out there when it comes to tools. So tools are a way that we connect LLMs to the real world. Like an example is like if you have a Notion account, you can install a Notion MCP server. That's got a bunch of tools in it that can read and write, pages in your Notion. And it's very easy, right? Well, this idea, the ubertool idea is, actually, you give it one big tool. And actually not even really a big tool. It's a very simple tool. And the simple tool is eval. And you eval either JavaScript or Python. And then your model, when it wants to go and say connect to Notion to, write or read a document or something like that, instead of just using that MCP tool with the dedicated tools in it and all that, it would instead write code in Python or JavaScript to do that tool invocation and then run it on your behalf. So it is the Uber tool, the tool that can do anything, and you only need one tool, and that's the ability to write code. So what do you think?
I am not following, to be honest with you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of code. Like, is my tool writing bash scripts? Is it writing JavaScript?
JavaScript. Yeah, straight up. Like if in the case of Notion, because it's a REST API endpoint, it would go and write JavaScript to make take your token. You might get that from the environment, or you might have to put that in the prompt or something, and then literally write the same code that's probably in that tool or something equivalent to it on the fly to go and make that request, do all the auth. It's going to have to go and grab the docs from the opening, the endpoints and all that kind of fun stuff.
So it somehow has to know what the API endpoints that are available to it are, and then it will write its own API calls to those endpoints to make the new document or edit your document or put in whatever notes you had, that kind of thing.
Yeah. If you want to do the Notion thing, obviously, if you wanted to go use a Postgres database, it would have to download the Postgres client or whatever, do all that work, all that kind of fun stuff. What do you think, TJ?
I'm still not totally following the flow here because what does this mean in terms of specifics? Is this something I'm writing? Is this just a different approach to writing, like an MCP with tools?
No, there are MCP servers out there that have a tool that uses Python. It's basically just they wrap a Python interpreter in an MCP tool, and then the Claude, in this case, like Sonnet or Opus or GPT-5. Goes and writes Python to go and make the request to, let's say, Postgres or to an endpoint, and then it actually goes and sends it off to the tool, and then that tool then runs it.
Yeah, this is blowing my mind a little bit because it's like instead of creating very curated tools, right, for specific actions, we're going to take this Notion example apparently through the whole episode, but for one Notion thing, instead of having add a note and retrieve a note or the many different actions, instead you would build this tool that could tell it about all different sorts of things it could do, and it's just writing Python code or JavaScript code on the fly.
It's really Claude, actually. It's Claude writing the code and then just passing the code to the tool to then go and execute it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it at a high level, but I still like, I think I need to work in this and see it to actually totally understand it, because this is just too many concepts. I don't know.
All right. Well, so I think it's kind of crazy, actually, myself. I think it's a little nuts because, like, one thing, for example, one big issue that I have with it is obviously security, right? You're basically opening up this massive security hole where, you know, you had this, like, dedicated, you know, thing that you could audit that would go and connect it. Yeah.
As soon as you bring up eval, it gives me horrible flashbacks. That for people that weren't around, that was like the classic JavaScript's web security vulnerability. I mean, it still is to this day, but eval is a JavaScript method that just takes like a string and runs it as JavaScript. And
this is like vulnerability as a service.
Yeah, exactly. It's just as dangerous as you think it is. But people used to do this. It used to be common on the web. We would just get some string and we'd eval it. And then at first we didn't think too hard about it.
No. But now it's, so that's one big issue. The other big issue is that, I mean, the cost differential here is crazy, right? You know, basically rewriting these tools or having your massive LLM, which is massively subsidized, by the way. Like all of these AIs, the top tier frontier models are subsidized between 150 and 300%, which means that if you pay OpenAI $1, it may cost them $3 to actually run the query that you're actually asking them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually they're going to need to like make some money on that thing. And so that means that whatever you're paying now, if you think that's expensive, imagine it, 3-5 times that in order for them to make any money off this. So, you're going to be spending a lot of tokens to go and rewrite tools on the fly that, are already written for you. So
that's kind of what I was wondering. It's like, I understand why you might want to do this because it's very dynamic, I guess. You can write to any API as long as there's decent documentation for it, but also your LLM has to figure out how to do that. And I've watched Claude thinking about things for a long time sometimes, trying to figure things out. So if you're doing that for every single request that you're making, that just seems like a recipe for extremely long duration, agent times for one thing, and then a lot of tokens spent just for it to try and figure out exactly how it needs to do this or look up documentation again to figure it out again, whereas you could just have a specific MCP tool or server that already lays out these are all the API endpoints, these are what they're used for, that your
and makes
LLM
the calls, right? And that doesn't cost you any tokens, it just works, right? So it's interesting. I think that for me, when I stand back and look at this, I kind of I think there is a world where you might need an eval tool in a POC world. Like it's like, I need to make, some scripts or something like that, and I want to run them, and I don't have an agentic IDE for whatever reason that can do all that, honestly, for me. Then the idea of having one of these tools that's got an eval in it is cool. But it's one of many, right? It's something. It doesn't replace anything. It's not like there's a Swiss Army knife tool that sort of does all the things. It's just this one. It's just one thing that helps me do my stuff, and I still have all my other tools that very efficiently and effectively communicate with the services that I need to communicate with, or do whatever I need to do. So it's just an interesting idea. It's been floated around, and it started to gain some traction. I'm seeing more articles on it, and I'm seeing, seeing videos on it and this kind of thing. So I just kind of wanted to put it out there like, hey, this is probably, you should think twice about using this pattern.
I think the broader thing here is we still, as an industry, don't know how to write these tools to be effective. So people are just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing, and if somebody came up with this idea, like, what if we could just have it just pass code and it could do anything? And it probably does solve some problems better, but there's also there's issues with using it, and I think we're still trying to figure out the best way of writing these things.
Interesting for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of interesting, Paige, I hear that we have some infrastructure as code JavaScript thing going on. What is this all about?
We do. So there is a library that's making some headlines this week, and it's called Alchemy. And its whole idea is that it wants you to be able to write your infrastructure config files, which previously you might have used something like Terraform. That's probably one of the most well-known. But basically, you can write your infrastructure in JavaScript or TypeScript, which is, every web developer's dream, because everything we want to be written in JavaScript and TypeScript, except for our tools, which are all written with Rust. But besides that. But yeah, it's an embeddable IaC library that will run anywhere that JavaScript runs. So if you have serverless functions, if you're using Bun or Dino, if you have Cloudflare workers and things like that, it says that it can run in any of those places. And instead of having to, like I said, write some weird Terraform files, which I am not good with, or use the AWS Cloud Console or a CLI or something, you write some TypeScript, you run the code, and your infrastructure is set up. And it can do databases, it can do, node runtimes, it can do all sorts of different things. And it seems like a pretty cool idea. There's no dependencies, so it doesn't need anything else to run. You just write some async functions. You don't have to do class abstractions. You don't have to do hosted services. And then you just deploy it where you want. It gets stored in plain JSON files, so you can just see exactly what the config is and change that when you need to in your repo. And it says it can support all sorts of custom backends. So file systems, cloud storage, databases, and, of course, it is optimized for AI, and it will include a .cursor rules file to help AI tools to understand how to use it when it spins up. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, huge win. I'm not a big infrastructure guy, and the ability to go and just kind of like have it be very literately written out in TypeScript is very appealing.
For sure.
Yeah, the few times, also not an infrastructure person here, so we might not be the best people to comment exclusively on this, other than we're probably the exact target audience for this, because I also, every time I have to go into Terraform files, I feel like a complete idiot. Like I also feel like I'm totally going to screw something up when I do it. It's hosting stuff, infrastructure stuff is always scary. So anything that makes it more approachable, especially for front-end people, is a win in my book.
Yeah. We have entire engineering departments that are dedicated to just DevOps because it is so darn confusing and obscure and not approachable for a typical web developer. So making this easy and a language that most web developers already know and approach seems like such a huge win in every way. I'm very excited to check it out and see more of how people are using it and experiencing it.
And I feel like it's probably best used by the smaller groups, individual web developers building stuff that want to move some of their infrastructure to code. Because chances are, if you're at a bigger company, you do have a DevOps team, and that DevOps team has something that they like using. They're probably very familiar with things like Terraform files, so they're probably not going to want to switch over their infrastructure to something new in JavaScript based. But if you're like a 2-3 person team of JavaScript people that's working on building something and want to automate some of your infrastructure, this seems like a great little tool to check out.
Yeah. And if you still want to have modern features like a staging environment before you have a broad environment, just kind of a nice thing to have, testing environment, stuff like that. The ability
or like
to
an environment where you can show customers or clients something before it goes live, or features. Like sometimes spinning that stuff up manually can suck, especially if it's something you're doing on a repeatable basis, and starting to move some of that to infrastructure as code can be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, actually, you really want it to be able to be spun up seamlessly like that, so you don't end up getting instances that are special or whatever that don't delete that because everything depends on that kind of thing. I don't know. It's like the ability to take an app and deploy it as one like pod or whatever quickly is really good.
Well, and it only gets more as your stuff gets more complicated. If it's like a static website, chances are you don't have many problems with this. But the more services you start to use, you start needing a separate system for your auth and then a separate system for your database. And those should be completely isolated and secure. And once you start having more of those problems, this is where infrastructure as code can really make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, my news for this week is Next.js. So Next.js, everybody's favorite React server-side library by Vercel. They have a new release out this week for the 15.5 release. It's not a giant release, but there are quite a few interesting things in here. So I thought I'd go kind of quickly through the bullet points of everything that's in this release for any Next users or kind of Next curious people that want to keep tabs on what's going on with the framework. So the first big thing they're headlining feature is that production TurboPack builds are now in beta. TurboPack, if you're not familiar, it's Next.js's basically Webpack replacement that's designed to be a faster, but mostly Webpack compatible bundler and whatnot that they're building into Next directly. And TurboPack is already production ready for dev mode. So if you're running Next dev, you can throw --TurboPack at the end of it to work with TurboPack. Well, now this is when you're actually bundling up and building your website. So with TurboPack, you can do next build --TurboPack, which will use TurboPack as part of the build process. They talk in this blog post about how TurboPack was designed from the ground up to take advantage of multiple CPU cores throughout all phases of the build. And then, of course, in a classic of any of these blog posts, they talk about how it's 2x faster, 5x faster at all these things, because of course it is, which I imagine it probably would have to be, right? It's a from the ground up rewrite of Webpacks. You'd expect it to be faster. So if you're using Next and you want to improve your build times, which who doesn't want to improve their build times? Now that it's in beta, it might be worth trying out. It's just a quick flag. You can add it on, see what happens, see if it works for you.
Awesome.
Second, their next update is related to middleware. So middleware in Next.js is code that's built into their system that you can basically run on the server before a request is completed. And this is for things like auth. Auth is easily the most common thing people do with this, but you can also do things like rewrites and redirects at this layer as well. So previously, Next, in their blog post, they talk about how their middleware only supported their own, what they call their edge runtime, which was basically custom designed for Next.js. It ran on their edge infrastructure and whatnot, but it did have some limitations. And so in their 15.2 release, they had this basically a Node.js based runtime that you could use for middleware that they introduced back in 15.2. And they're now saying that middleware layer is now stable. So if you want to use Node for middleware for your Next.js apps, there's a config change you have to make in your Next config, and you can switch over to running in Node, which allows you to use just Node.js specific libraries and APIs as part of your middleware. And apparently that was a pretty common request. A lot of auth things are designed to work in Node directly. And so apparently this is a big deal. I've not yet used middleware in Next. I know that it exists, but I haven't needed any of it for the apps that I've worked on. But this is available. They do say that it's not going to be the default quite yet, so they're still going to default to their edge runtime for middleware, but that they're going to be, they say that, monitoring community feedback and usage patterns and whatnot as well.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
And then, so Next.js also brings, they say, major TypeScript improvements to the app router with full TurboPack compatibility and comprehensive type safety for routing. So typed routes will provide compile time safety for your application's routes, catching invalid links before they reach production. This feature automatically generates types based off your file structure, ensuring that every link component points to a valid route. So kind of cool. This has become the trendy thing to do, I feel like, lately for JavaScript frameworks is just full type compatibility for routes. So kind of cool to see that coming to Next.js as well. And then the last thing I noted, starting with 15.5, the next lint command will show a deprecation warning, and the command will be removed in Next.js 16. So they say they're doing this because they are modernizing the linting experience by transitioning to explicit ESLint configurations and introducing Biome as a fast alternative. So Biome is, of course, the Rust.js, or the Rust-based, because, of course, all of our infrastructure in the front-end world is written with Rust. This basically opens the door for you to use Biome, or they say they'll have a code mod that you can use that if you want to keep just using ESLint exactly as you're doing today, you just run this code mod and it'll switch it over for you. But you now have the opportunity, if you want to use Biome, they have docs on how you can switch over to do that.
Cool.
Awesome.
And that's basically the release. They had a couple minor notes at the bottom. They said this is going to be the last real release before Next 16. And so they discuss a few things they'll be removing. So if you are a Next person, it's probably worth skimming the blog post just to get all the notes that we're not going to cover every last bullet in here. I did think it was interesting. One of the things they're removing is AMP support. And it's funny that that's the first time I'd heard of AMP in
a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But for people that aren't familiar, AMP was I'm already using past tense. I think it's still a thing that Google provides, but it was essentially this protocol that Google invented for basically like content sites and things like blogs and news sites and whatnot, that if you returned your content in a very specific way, and actually that was one of the biggest problems with it, you had to it was very specific in how you had to return your content. It would load it basically incredibly quickly. That was the core idea behind AMP. And it was getting popular for a while, and then it very suddenly just kind of died. I can't remember the last time I actually saw an AMP thing come up in a Google search. I don't know.
If I recall, one of the issues with it, though, in addition to having to really specifically format your content, was that it also took away from the SEO of the main site. Like it posted some weird Google-based URL instead of what the actual site URL was, which of course every SEO person and site content creator hated. But like you said, it loaded a lot faster, so it benefited them in some ways, but also was a negative in a lot of other ways. But yeah, I can't tell you the last time I actually heard anybody talking about AMP in terms of improvements or more widespread adoption or anything. So yeah, that's interesting that Next.js like purposefully supported that actually.
Yeah, because I saw a lot of implementations where they'd have a separate AMP pipeline, sometimes even a separate AMP's domain even.
Wow.
Would just, so you could get an article in AMP format and then regular, and then you'd have to work this weird dance of how you tried to keep them in sync and the SEO implications of all of that. And I think that complexity is part of what killed this, because then it's at a certain point you have to say, like, what's the value in doing this? Like, am I really getting enough from these like random Google clicks that aren't actually benefiting me all that much at the end of the day anyways? And I don't know, it appears to be dead, and now Next is removing all of its stuff that I didn't even know existed. So,
I wonder if AI killed it. Because, I mean, it really was a Google thing, right? So it was all about the Google search engine. I don't know of any other search engines that were optimized for AMP. It was clearly a Google-specific thing. And, now Google has like that AI suggestions thing that pops up seemingly on literally every query. And basically tries to do something, a condensation that's similar to what you were trying to get with AMP anyway, right? So the idea of AMP was that you have these like a much smaller, more dedicated version of the article that was like, this is just going to like pop up when I click on the link or something like that, where now you kind of get that in the AI stuff, which is a whole separate issue when it comes to SEO, because now essentially they're mining your articles and that's a whole thing.
I feel like AMP was on the decline before AI, and then AI was like the nail in the coffin.
Right? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think so.
Well, that is Next.js 15.5. So like I said, the link, if you're a Next user, I always recommend reading through these guides in a bit more detail, but that's just kind of the high level overview of what they're working on. And I think that is our news for this week, but I know we have some fun lightning stuff to discuss.
We do.
All right, Paige, do you want to start us off? I think we have a hacking story in here.
Yes. So CodeRabbit, which you may be familiar with if you read like the Bytes newsletter or some of the other tech weekly newsletters, they advertise pretty often. They are an AI company that does code in particular, and I think that they do like kind of like Claude Code, code completion and AI agentic tools that will write your code for you and do scanning and PR reviews and all that stuff. Well, they were recently the subject of a paper and I think it was one of those white hat hackathons where the security experts get together and basically see if they can brute force their way into different websites that say they're secure and then aren't when the hackers get going. But yeah, they got hacked to the tune of exposing all of their, I think, customer personal data. They were able to execute code through CodeRabbit onto remote desktops and other people's computers because they had figured out how to do root access. And this was released, this write-up, I should say, was released just recently, but the whole experience took place, I'd want to say, back in maybe January, or it was early this year.
Issues in 2025.
Yeah, and they made CodeRabbit aware of the issues, the security breaches, everything that they were able to do. CodeRabbit has since plugged those holes, and everything is back to normal. But it just goes to show you that there is so much that we don't know still about how to securely use AI agents or build tools that use AI agents for us. So just be aware of what you're telling your agent or letting them do, please.
Or the permissions that you're giving them.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially, I feel like in the MCP world, I've seen some wild things.
Like an ubertool. They can go and run eval code for you. Whoa, yeah.
Exactly.
Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the Wild West, and be mindful. That's all.
Yeah, it sounds like the end of this, this team that found this responsibly disclosed it. CodeRabbit team was able to fix this vulnerability before this blog post was actually published. So it sounds like in this case all was well, but like Paige said, just use these tools responsibly. You careful when you give up permissions and secrets and tokens and whatnot.
Yeah, and thank goodness for white hat hackers.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The next thing, I have another Vercel thing that made the list. Vercel has a proposal for a new standard. It's a small little thing, but they want to propose this new script that we can add to our HTML. So this is a blog post that they go into this proposal for inline LLM instructions in HTML. So they open this up by saying, how do you tell an AI agent what it needs to do when it hits a protected page? So in Vercel's specific use case, they have these preview deployments, and they have some protection around those so people can't just publicly access these deployments that might have, private under development software. But it does prevent coding agents like Claude Code and whatnot to be able to access these deployments as well. So what they are proposing that they do is they add this new script to your HTML page. So the script, and this is hard to do over the radio, but I'm going to try. So it's a script tag with a type, and the type is set to text/llms.txt.
Cute. Okay.
This works because browsers ignore script elements that have an unknown type. So if you create a script tag and you give it some random type, the browser will just throw it away. Basically, doesn't need anything to do with it. But of course, LLMs don't care. The LLMs just have the text. So they're proposing this as a place where LLMs can look for instructions on what to do. So in Vercel's case, they're putting this script tag out there with instructions for the LLM, say like, hey, this is a Vercel protected page. If you actually want to access that, these are the steps you need to do, and link off to their documentation pages and whatnot. But they're also proposing this to be just a broader thing that we can do, like just throw this script on a page to just specifically curate it for LLMs. And it's not an accident that they're using as part of that type the llms.txt file, because they see this as kind of an extension of the spec that exists for that is also around just building sites that are more LLM friendly or that have LLM specific instructions. And they see this as kind of an extension to that.
That's very cool. I wonder if we could use this also for doing like condensation of documentation. So it's like, okay, here's my documentation for my API, but also here's this llms.txt file that's kind of embedded in it, which is like the LLM friendly version of that. You know, for like a context 7 or something like that to grab, or an LLM just to grab and be like, oh, I could read the docs, but I could read this a whole lot faster.
Yeah, this is like an exact problem we're dealing with at Blues right now, because we have this very detailed API reference for a lot of the stuff we do. And the thing is, it was designed to be very friendly for human readers. So there's lots of things like these tags that have lots of that have lots of markup. And stuff around it, and a lot more HTML ceremony that you'd want for an LLM, and sometimes that confuses the LLM, because an LLM is just going to want to see, oh, these are the things that this supports. They're not going to want to see them wrapped up in a tag that has a tooltip on it, because that's kind of just extraneous information for it. And we're still at the point where we're debating exactly how to present that to an LLM. And so this is very relevant for us too.
This is actually something we're struggling with on TanStack actually too. So we got a lot of documentation. It's human user readable. We're going to be updating it because, we got a new version. Anyway, TanStack Start is going to release, and we want all the docs to be up to date with that. But really, we also want like an LLM-friendly version of that. And so having some way to go and take documentation and basically say, well, these are the parts that should go into that LLM-friendly thing, and have it kind of do like a two-way fork in the road kind of deal. Like it's like, okay, well, we'll generate this and we'll generate that, but we only have to maintain one artifact.
Yeah.
That's what we want. And so anybody who's listening, if you have that solution, let us know over on the Discord channel, because otherwise we're going to end up making that. And, I think it's cool, but it seems like everybody in the world needs that at this point.
If there's a framework or a library that can do that pretty successfully, especially for these more complicated sites that have like multiple different versions or, different tags and drop downs and things that users can choose, and that changes the content, we need you. We need you now.
Right.
So our last piece of lightning news is on Claudia. So this is a third-party tool. We to be totally blunt, we're re-recording this segment because I was totally fooled. I thought this was actually done by Anthropic. Turns out it is made by a company called Asterisk. It is a GUI that sits on top of Claude Code. So Claude Code, if you're not familiar, is a terminal-based tool by Anthropic for interacting with their Claude models, for doing agentic things, or just for doing vibe coding, whatever it is you need to do. We're big fans of Claude Code here on the show, but having it be in the terminal is kind of limiting because some people aren't very terminal friendly. And even me, as a person who enjoys using the terminal a bit, I sometimes do like having GUI-based tools for certain tasks. And Claudia, I was super excited for it because if you look at its features, it's a GUI for Claude Code, but it also introduces checkpoints and reverting, something you actually can't do in Claude Code, which is kind of crazy. It has these dashboards for usage and for creating custom agents. And so it sounds really, really cool. Unfortunately, when I went to try it, it was extremely buggy. The UX was not great. At some point I went to create an agent, then I wanted to go back to the home screen, and I couldn't figure out how to do it without closing the thing and starting it back up. So I really like the idea. I was hoping this was a real thing that I could actually use, and maybe it will be. Maybe it's just a really early look at something that might end up being really great. But right now, I'd probably recommend staying away from it because it does feel pretty buggy. But it already has 14,000 stars on GitHub, which is
wow.
Which I think shows the enormous demand for something like this, because that's a big number for a third-party tool that just came out. Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's kind of strange though, because You can use Claude Code in VS Code or Cursor as an extension. So do we really need this extra thing on the side that also is another way to interact with Claude Code? It feels like there's almost too many different ways that you could go. Like, how many different visual representations do we need?
Yeah, you can like shell script around Claude Code. So that's another one that we don't talk about. Yeah. So, and it's like, yeah, you're right. It's like bouncing between like, which is cooler? Is it CLI? Is it UI? No, get what? When does it stop? Like, we're going to have like a CLI for Claudia.
Yeah.
Probably.
It's like Inception.
It's interesting. I think there is demand for this because I think there are people that just don't like the nuances of the terminal because especially if you're using Claude Code and you're not a experienced developer, which those people very much exist. If you're using Claude Code to do some vibe coding, that sort of thing, busting out the terminal and just knowing things about how tabs in terminals work, how Control-C in the terminal works, I could see that being overwhelming to some people. And like I said, it's still, to me, from a terminal, it's hard to get the visuals of checkpoints of where I'm at. That's the one thing I really like about, say, Cursor. It's easy to know, like, oh, if I went down a bad path with an LLM, like 2 or 3 commands, and I realized, actually, this is totally not going to work. Let's back up a bit. And Cursor, I can just scroll back up. I ran into this yesterday with Claude Code, where we went on a journey together where we were trying to implement this feature. And at some point, I realized that like Claude had just kind of lost it at this point. It was like, and I had to tell it like, okay, like give up on this approach because it wanted to. It's long story short, but it was enhancing some markup and it was doing this with React with this use effect. And I'm like, this is not gonna scale well. This is getting out of hand. Like we need to get off the React use effect train here and take a totally different approach. But I couldn't I needed to arbitrarily go back like 4 levels. And there's no way to doing that. So instead I had to just explain to it like, okay, like just writing out, okay, give up on the use effect. Let's go back a ways. And it took me a few minutes. It would have been nice to scroll up in some GUI to see what I was doing. And yeah. So
you're absolutely right, TJ. This is the wrong path to be on, TJ.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I've so been on this journey. Oh my God.
I know. I can relate to that though, because Claude and I did that a couple weeks ago where we went on a voyage of refactoring and like an hour and a half later, we ended up pretty close to where we had started because Claude fixed one thing and then I realized that I'd broken 3 other things by suggesting it. So yeah, eventually we got back to the beginning and we were very, very close to what we had originally begun with. And I was like, oh, this was not a good experience.
Yeah.
But, I think that's just part of learning to work with these tools and but at the same time, like you're saying, people aren't comfortable in the terminal. I get that. But as soon as you open the terminal and type Claude, you're like, you don't need to know anything else about the terminal. Then you're just talking in natural language to Claude about your code. And there's really no terminaling left to do. So,
and losing a bunch of features, prompt, like all the checkpointing stuff that's built into VS Code and all the cool stuff that's like, the file browser and all the rest of it that was in VS Code to start with, and now is in Claudia. And what is going on?
I just like to have my Claude window open, doing its thing in Claude Code, and my VS Code windows open so that I can watch as the changes happen and be running the browser so that I can test things as Claude's making changes. That seems to work pretty well for me personally.
I'll say though, because I mean, I agree with you. I'm using the same flow, but just there are little things like when you're in Claude and you type Claude, the text box you have isn't like a text area. It's a terminal input, so you can't select text with your cursor. Yeah, like there's little things like that I think are going to throw off.
You can drag and drop an image.
People.
You can,
yes,
and you can copy paste images, which is really great.
Oh, I haven't tried that. But I have definitely done the drag and drop. I guess copy and paste is you're seeing in the Finder, like copy.
And you
like
can even copy if you have like multiple screenshots of something that you need to show it, like console output or whatever. You can copy multiple ones and just paste them in all at once, which is pretty sweet.
My last thing I'll mention about this, because I just thought it's hilarious. I don't know if this is a Claude Code thing or a Claudia thing, but when you're in Claudia, there's this drop down it basically configures how much Claude should think. It's quite literally a thinking drop down. And the drop down has 5 options. The first is auto.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So auto, which is the default, so you just kind of let Claude decide. But then you can override it and tell it to think hard, think harder, or my favorite, if you really need to bust it out, if it's a really bad problem, you can pick ultra think.
Ultra think. Okay.
And
nice.
Again, I don't know if this is coming from Claudia or Claude Code, but I love the term ultra think.
Ultra think.
That is great.
Yeah. Man, I'm just going to start busting that out in casual conversations. Like, do you have some time?
I need to ultra think about this.
Yeah. Yeah, don't interrupt me. I'm ultra thinking right now. Like, this is...
It's so true. Oh, my God. I was working on something, and, I was deep into it. And my wife came over and was asking me, I can't remember, something about, like a dough recipe or something. And I just, it was like... I just could not. I was like, wait, parsing human speech. What is this? Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's like Claude and I are like 6 levels deep on this database structure right now. Like, I just don't have brain capacity for this.
I can't. Yeah.
Nice. All right. We should move on because I feel like we could talk for 50 minutes about UltraThink specifically, but I know we have some other stuff. We have a fire starter this week to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. So the fire starter for this week is an attribute that has been around for a few years, depending on which browser you're using, but it just recently landed in Safari version 125. So it's now supported by all major browsers.
Yes.
And it is an attribute that you can put on an HTML element, and it is hidden equals until found, which I'd never heard of it.
That name.
Didn't know it existed, but apparently it does. And the idea is that it enables any hidden content within a page to be findable if you're using Control F or Command F in your browser. So if you're trying to type for a specific piece of content that is like inside of an accordion, for instance, is where this is, I think, most commonly used.
Okay.
It still allows it to be findable by search.
That's cool.
Yeah. I just totally tried it and it works, and that's kind of crazy.
That's actually cool. Okay.
So the details element, which has been around for a little while, is kind of the new HTML way to do this. But before it existed, there wasn't really a way to do accordions and just hide particular pieces of content, but still make them visible to the browser or to the user if they really wanted to find it or knew what they were looking for. So this actually does that. It lets us collapse a section of content, but it still allows user to find it through search or navigation. So it's just an attribute that like I said, I'd never heard of it before, didn't know it existed, have probably encountered it many times in the wild, but it is there, and it seems like it's got a really good purpose.
Totally. Yeah. Sounded crazy until it didn't.
Right, until you tried
exactly. It's got a funny name, but it actually, I totally would have used this in accordions in the past, so this is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I do find a lot on pages. A lot.
For sure. Yeah. So keep that in mind if you're trying to build something like this and for whatever reason you can't use details or it just doesn't fit. Hidden until found. Pretty neat.
By the way, pro tip, if anybody didn't know, if you're an iOS user, you can find from the share menu, which is one of the most bizarre UX things ever. But in the share menu, you can there's a find on page. So you can do that.
What does it do? How's it different than just find?
Well, it is find. That's just where they put that's just where they put their find menu is under the share menu.
Oh, weird. Okay. I just use Command F,
Me too.
I have no idea what menu it's on. Like
No. On an iPhone. On Safari on an iPhone.
Okay.
So if you're like on Wikipedia on your phone reading something and you need to do a find, you can hit the share icon and then there's an option that's find on page and then you can do your search that way.
Got it.
Ooh,
okay.
That is a good pro tip.
I don't do anything real on iPhones anyway, so it's like, I just find it. I find the page, and then I go and just literally do a airdrop or whatever to my Mac, and that's where I actually
Just
do
ask
my work.
ChatGPT. Like, I'm not going to read Wikipedia
gonna
in
read
2025 like that.
No. Yeah, no. I give Claude a lot of links. And be like, okay, let's talk about this. Like, what is this guy talking about?
And you're sitting back in your chair, like swirling around wine. Like, let's
what is this?
Setting Claude to ultra think. Like, let's do this.
I don't want to think about this. You do it.
All right. Well, this is, I think a lot of stuff is making us happy today. This is a pretty fun episode, but let's talk about what else is making us happy. Paige, what is making you happy this week?
All right, I have a new audiobook recommendation, which I know we like to pass around between ourselves, if nothing else. So this one is called The Art Thief. Have either of you heard of it, watched it, listened to it? No?
I think my wife might have, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Passing this on to my wife right now.
So it's a really interesting book, and there may be, like, one of the streaming services may have made a show based on it, perhaps, but either way, it's a really interesting story about a guy in the early to mid 90s who is just this serial art thief in Europe and gets away with it for years and just steals from all sorts of museums and galleries and castles and even a couple of churches, and just keeps collecting this stuff. And it's not because he's actually selling it. He just really, really likes art himself. And so he becomes extremely adept at just lifting pieces out of museums. And it's a tale of how he does this for years undetected, and then eventually does get apprehended by the police. But for years, everybody is just stumped as to who this person is. They think it's a ring. They think there's some criminal mastermind behind it. You know, many of the stealing, when he does steal, some of it is really just like he sees something and there's nobody else in the room like paying attention to him, and he manages to get stuff that way. It's not carefully planned out or anything like that. And it's just absolutely fascinating how much he manages to accumulate and what simple rudimentary tools and like tactics he uses to go about doing this. But it's a really, really interesting story. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it right now, and I am not quite sure how it's going to end at this point because he's in police custody, and I don't know if they're gonna find his trove of treasures or not. But it's really fascinating and also kind of alarming to think about how little security there is around some of what is typically some of our national treasures of great pieces of art.
I'm always fascinated by this sort of stuff, honestly. And I love the movies that they run around. Like Thomas Crown Affair is awesome, and I love a good art heist movie. Just a huge fan of that.
Then I think you'd probably really enjoy this one. It's a good listen.
Yeah, who's the author? I got to make sure I add I can check the show notes. I got to make sure I add, it looks like there's a couple things named The Art Thief, which is not that surprising. It's a pretty common name. So I got to add this.
I'll be able to tell you after the show for sure.
Yep, I'll just get it from the show notes. Get it on my list. Jack, what is making you happy this week?
The Alien Earth show on Hulu is making us happy this week. So now I think it's out with its 3rd episode, and it is just an incredibly well done show that fits right into the whole Alien canon and is very true to the Alien style. Like right away, it's got a lot of memories about the whole alien feel, and the alien and the special effects are just absolutely incredible, and the actors in it are great. So just really, it's just high quality TV, and really excited to see where this series goes. Like every episode is just like, whoa! I can't believe they're adding so much color and depth to that world.
How much of the Alien universe do I have to understand to follow this show? Because I think I've only ever seen the original movie.
Probably just Alien and Aliens, like the second one would be.
Okay.
Yeah, those two, and you would probably have enough to understand the show.
I have to, at some point I got to read, like I saw the original Alien movie. It's been years at this point, to the point where I only have vague, I only remember the very obvious scenes and things that happened in that one. I think I'm due to like dive back into that world. Because I think the remake or the new one that they made was pretty good too. So
yeah, the one that was just out. I can't remember, I'm blanking on the name, but that was really good. And so there's definitely a couple of movies in the series. Alien and Aliens are excellent. I happen to like Prometheus. A lot of people don't. And then the most recent one that came out, I think, was actually really excellent. And now this show is just absolutely fantastic. But really, all you need to know, in fact, actually, honestly, just Alien, you could watch it like as is, but like it's got some kind of colonial marine stuff in it. So Aliens, which is a fantastic movie on its own anyway. And as they're going through it, you'll be like, oh my God, that line comes from Aliens. Like half the lines that we use, game over, dude, game over, come from Aliens. So just a good movie on its own.
Well, what's making me happy this week is Pips, and this is a new game in the New York Times series of games. So I've talked about my love for the New York Times games several times before on this show. Pips is brand new. It's a game where you use dominoes. This is going to be hard to explain, so I'm just going to give the most surface level description of it. But you use dominoes, and I learned today that the dots on dominoes are called pips, so that's where the name comes from. I had not known that. But basically, it's a puzzle game, so it'll present ways that a board where you have to place dominoes onto, and they'll highlight a part of the board that'll say, like, these 2 squares have to add up to 7, and these 3 squares all have to be equal, and these 3 squares all have to be the same. Different rules for different sections of the board, and then each day you get an easy, a medium, and a hard puzzle. The easy one you can usually solve in like 20, 30 seconds by the time you understand the rules. All the way up to the hard one, it can take several minutes. But of course, it becomes immediately competitive because then you want to try to solve it as fast as possible. But I think it's pretty good. Not all the New York Times games are great. They keep trying to add on these games, which is, to me, kind of interesting. But Pips is the first one of their new ones in a while that I really liked. We're having fun with it. I just did it. I crushed it this morning, so I'm in a good mood with the game right now.
Nice. I'm always amazed by like the depth of the amount of content that they have to generate for these games. Like the Wordle stuff. It's like Wordle's been going on since like the early pandemic days, and there's still 5-letter words that people are doing, and they haven't run out. Like, what is going on?
If you work for the New York Times Games development team, we'd love to talk to you if you're able to talk about any of it, because I always wonder about the back ends of some of this, like how, like the tech behind it is very cool, but I always wonder like who's on the other end, because it's not the JavaScript developer that's going in and writing they're putting in the crossword puzzle every day. But what they do with the crossword puzzles, oftentimes they have very specific things going on, like different gimmicks that they build into this. And I always wonder, as the author of these puzzles, is this like a WordPress plugin that they're logging into to write these things? Or I'm very curious of the back end of these systems. So I also admire these games just for the tech ability, because this Dominoes game, it's got a non-trivial front end, because you've got this custom board that's got to be rendered, and then these dominoes that you have to be able to twist and drag and drop, and it's a pretty good implementation. It's still a little bit wonky probably because it's brand new, but overall it's quite good.
And it works on mobile, and obviously
Yep, yeah. Mobile works on their apps, so it's pretty well done.
Yeah,
nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is our episode for this week. Thanks always for joining us. We always have a fun time. If you want, you can come hang out in our Discord server. We've been talking this week about Australian rules football and some other fun stuff, so you can come hang out with us there. And all the other means of contacting us, all our socials and stuff, that is all in the show notes as well. But until next week, this has been another episode, and we'll see everybody later.
See you next week.
See you then.